I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest. Nobody's going to hear your response except for yourself. Here's a question. Has this ever happened to you? Imagine the scenario. You are interpreting in the consecutive mode. The person speaking says something and you're like, oh, I got this. I got it. This is great. Maybe you take notes, maybe you don't, but you've got that sentence. Then they say another sentence. And you're like, I got this too. I'm on it. I'm awesome. And then you're about to interpret, and they keep going. They say a new sentence. And you're like, ooh, and your alarm bells start going ding, 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 ding. And then they keep talking. And you lose it. You lose it completely. Not only do you lose what they've just said, but you lost what they said before. You don't remember anything because panic has overtaken your brain. Has this ever happened to you? It's happened to me. It has definitely happened to me. And one of the things that has helped me to overcome this problem, which is truly a problem of panic, of stress, one of the things that's helped me to overcome it is a stress management technique of focus and concentration and making sure that I'm focusing on the right things at the right time. So I like to call this my 3-brain theory. It is not peer-reviewed, it is unscientific, it is anecdotal, but I think it's totally true. Maybe not physiologically, but I do think it's true that we have 3 brains. That's the theory. We have 3 brains, okay? The first brain is our listening brain. In the consecutive mode, the very first thing that we have to do is listen. That's all we have to do is listen. But we listen like our life depends on it. We visualize, we internalize, we listen to understand, we listen for the logic. And listening is all that we have to do in that first phase, okay? That's our first brain, the listening brain. Then comes the interpreting brain. And when we interpret, we commit to our interpretation, and we are the best interpreter that there ever was. The only thing that we're worried about at that moment is interpreting. Saying what we have internalized, what we have heard in our other language. Our third brain is the critical analytical brain. That's the brain that later can listen to a recording of your interpretation and say, you know what, maybe let's focus even more on visualization. Maybe let's work a little bit on language interference. The critical brain later can evaluate our performance and tell us what we can do better. And in a real life situation, the critical voice can bring to people's attention a mistake that we may have made. Okay? We are allowed to do that. We can correct our mistakes. But the key is that these 3 brains are not friends with each other. They are not allowed to party together. They are not allowed to go out to the bar on a Saturday night. They must remain separate. And what that means is that while you are listening, you are only listening. You are not worrying about how you're going to say the thing later. You're not worrying about how you're going to remember so much material. You're not worrying about anything that is unimportant to the act of listening. Your listening brain acts on its own without interference. Then when you are interpreting, like I said earlier, you are the best interpreter there ever was. You've got this. You say all of the information that you can possibly remember, and then if you have to deal with asking for a repetition later, then you ask for the repetition later. But in the moment, you are the best interpreter that there ever was. And finally, your analytical brain can come in later. Like I said earlier, if it's a real life situation, then you're allowed to correct yourself. If you're at home, you can evaluate your recording, figure out what you could do better, and do it again. And if it's after a test, just shut your analytical brain off. It won't make a difference. You can't go back and change time. But hopefully, if you were listening strongly enough, then you were interpreting to the best of your abilities, then that will be enough. So once again, we have these 3 brains, and they allow us to focus on what we need to focus on without being influenced by other things that don't matter and that are just going to distract us. We have our listening brain, we have our interpreting brain, and we have our analytical brain, and we must keep them separate. Try it and see what you think.